Joining us on the podcast somehow for the first time here tonight is one of the legends we have in our sports. Of course, if you go through resumes in college tennis history, few men could match his. Of course, his most recent accomplishment, guiding his team to both a first Big Ten tournament championship in program history and, of course, a date back in the Sweet-16 following their 4-2 round 2 victory over Cal. Welcome back onto this show, UCLA men's tennis head coach Billy Martin. Coach, it is great to have you. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing here tonight?
Doing great. Thank you, Alex, for having me. No, it's been an exciting sort of last half of the season for my Bruin team. I have to say it did not start out well, and it was disappointing because I really thought we had a great group of young, talented players. Had some injuries that, kind of got us off to a bad start, but they persevered and really, would not be denied. And yes, that win at Ohio State over my good friend Ty Tucker to win that Big Ten championship tournament was phenomenal. And then our win up at Cal against a really good Cal team, and my old player Chris Quinta, who's doing such a good job coaching up there, that was special also. So we've got a lot of momentum, a lot of confidence, I think. But boy, this next one against our arch rival USC Trojans in the Super Regionals is going to be a blast.
No, I love the history in all of the matchups. Yeah, I'm a big enough nerd to remember the 2013 semifinal between you guys and Ohio State, and obviously to have a match like this here in Columbus. We can compare the two perhaps a little bit later, but I do want to ask you, of course, first about this team because coming into this 18-8 overall, into the round of 16 though unseeded. If I would have told you this is where you would be back on January 1st, what do you think you would have said to me?
What you smoking, I guess. We were 2-6 after our first 8 matches, and it was disappointing as I mentioned. But again, I really didn't give up. I thought we would probably get Spencer Johnson back, and Kalen would get adjusted. You remember we had two young freshmen that needed to get adjusted. Also, Kalen didn't play even in the fall; it started in January. So I thought our best stuff would probably be there towards the end of the season, which is really the important time when you really need them. But trust me, I was doing my, are we going to make 500? Maybe we're a good team, maybe we'll be ranked high enough, but are we going to be 500 so that we can, make the tournament officially? So there was some pessimist thoughts, but a lot of optimism. And the guys really showed the old coach that they want to be here and they want to be recognized and they're a force to be reckoned.
Yeah, no, certainly they have proved that with their play. And you mentioned the two freshmen, so that's where we can certainly start looking at Kalen and Rudy in particular. Anytime you ask two freshmen to play in your top three, I don't have to tell you what sort of a burden that is, but for them to have the success that they have had, Kalen in particular, I know he got off to a slow start. He's won his last 8 completed matches, which is a really nice place to find yourself here come May. What's allowed them to step into those roles and have the success that they've had?
Well, one talent, and the next they've played some big time tournaments against big time players. I think that, they've don't have to adjust to sort of being in the spotlight, I guess is one thing. But they're talented. Kalen's had a lot of the press really as far as, winning the French juniors, being the number one junior in the world. But I think even Kalen would admit that Rudy is, right on par with him. Not he didn't do too much international traveling, Rudy. But boy, he is a tough competitor. He's shown that. So both of them are playing very well right now. And Kalen, yes, that's been probably as much of a spark for us as anything. I think he's really getting interested in this end of the year, the conference tournament, NCAA's. You can see his enthusiasm, his work ethic and practice, his, Dame Gay face, being right there. So, and the rest of the team has seen that. Rudy's been rock solid all year. Having to play one with Spencer out, the entire year basically is not an easy fact for anybody. But for a young freshman, it's definitely been a little bit of a learning curve. He's done a great job, and I'm really proud of him. But yeah, I haven't had two freshmen playing in my top 3 spots for a long time, if ever.
No, it's very, very impressive stuff. I'm doing the math in my immediate history. I'm like, well, Mackey was three and Gage was four, so that doesn't count. And yeah, I mean, again, looking at all of the success that you guys have had despite, not knowing who you're going to have at any given moment, you kind of alluded to it at the start. On January 1st, I'm sure you, as well as a lot of us who follow it closely in the college tennis universe, like we saw the talent on paper. We saw what Spencer did in the fall. We mentioned Rudy Kwan. I should mention he got the most important stamp of approval in my life. My mom saw him play at the Junior U.S. Open, and she goes, "Alex, have you heard of this Rudy Kwan?" And I was like, "Yes, I've heard of him." Mom, she's like, "Trust me, peace." And I was like, "All right, I'm in." To have all of that talent and not have the results go the way you wanted those first couple of months, how'd you get this group to stay together to the point where now they can have this sort of success?
Well, I think a lot of it comes from good leadership of sort of our older guys, Alex and Giacomo. But yet, I think we have some wonderful young men that are of a team mentality, as hard as that is in the sport. But Emin's been with us for 3 years, Spencer for 2 years. You know, Spencer's technically a sophomore, but he went on his mission for 2 years, Mormon mission. Really matured during that time, so he's like a 23-year-old sophomore. But good leadership from our older guys and our mid guys, it's really helped us to keep everybody focused, not kind of hang their heads, wake up each day, work hard, and things are going to turn around. We lost a lot of close matches too. That was the thing. I mean, we lost two matches to SC 4-3, last match, third set. We had good matches with Cal and Stanford that we lost. We lost our second match of the year to USD, which is, I think, a phenomenal team, and proved that this year 4-3. So, we were right there knocking on the door with some of the top teams in the country. So, I guess I've been around the block enough to know that, it doesn't always go your way, but you keep working hard, things will change. And they did for us. Thank goodness. And, we've, been able to, feel really good about it because we've been on the other side of the fence. And I think it makes us kind of even appreciate it more.
Yeah, no, and I was fortunate enough to be on the call for your kickoff weekend, yourselves, Harvard, Texas A&M, and M, and Georgia. And in the moment, I remember watching and being like, "Oh, like this is a very good region. Like all these teams can play." And again, I know that weekend didn't go the way you guys would have hoped, but did you feel that sense as well? I know you kind of alluded to it in your last answer, but like coming off of that sort of kickoff weekend where you're like, "We are young, but man, we are good."
Yeah. Well, I thought I had the right scenario. I studied the draft. I did. Georgia was a little bit of a surprise. I didn't expect them to go there. Harvard, I thought, with losing a couple of their great players from the year before, because we had been there the year before. I thought, we would be comfortable playing there again. I liked their facility, their court speed. So I thought, but and I thought Texas A&M would be down too. And Steve, you know, did a great job getting, filling his spots that lost. So you never know. I mean, you do that in June, and the tournament's not until the end of January. A lot of things can happen, but I felt confident that we'd be able to maybe go and do it this year. But yes, it didn't. We lost a great match there to Texas A&M. I mean, Rudy was in the third set of the final match, up a break in the third. Again, a freshman. I think he got a little nervous there, but still, we were right there knocking on the door with A&M in that match, and then had a great win over a really good Georgia team. So good experience for us, and didn't leave with the result we wanted to, but still positive.
Yeah, no, and speaking of positive, we alluded to it earlier, but the Big Ten championships. And I watched the semifinal against Michigan State too, and you could kind of just see it then, like, oh, okay, like this team is starting to find itself. And I don't have to tell you how hard it is to win in Columbus. No one does it. Your guys managed to do it, and again, in the process, bring home a Big Ten tournament title in your first year in the conference. How gratifying was that moment for you as a coach? What did you see fall into place so well in Columbus?
Well, I could just see the momentum of our team building, uh, even the weeks before. I mean, we had just been to Nebraska and Wisconsin, which was, Wisconsin maybe not one of the better teams, but tough. We're flying in there, Thursday, playing Friday, go to Nebraska. Nebraska, a really good team. I mean, that was a tough, tough match at their place. But our guys were doing some special things on the road, especially. So we were used to not having the crowds with us, which I think toughened us up. But Michigan was down some of their players the first time we played them, and even the second time. So you're happy but glad, I guess, that that they're not the full strength, because they would be a phenomenal team. Michigan State had both their guys somewhat ready, we thought, but I just felt like we were playing with a lot of confidence. We had nothing to lose. We could come out firing with both barrels. Uh, I just saw it. I mean, when we stepped out for the doubles, it was really impressive, in my opinion. We went up 5-1 in two courts and breaking the other one. We really shut the crowd down. They were very quiet. And I'm not a real experienced Ohio State, playing there. We were there a few weeks before, and they were ruckus, but they beat us pretty good. But we started off the singles then, and we're holding our own. Certainly got tight and thought we were going to win it. Not easily, but I thought Emin would close it out there. Unfortunately, he didn't, and we had to go to that last, set of the last match. But he held up under pressure, and he's been doing that all year, and showing confidence, and it's wanting to be there in that last match. There's some guys that you just dread that, and some guys that want that. At least they're gonna go for it and play within themselves, and not want to hide, I guess, is a simpler way of saying it. But he really stood up and did a great job under tough conditions with the crowd certainly not for us. But really thought that was a great accomplishment for the team. For me personally, yes, I think it really was, knowing what a great record that team and what Ty has done for Ohio State tennis. We've been going at it, as we mentioned earlier, for so many years, and have, I think, a great deal of mutual respect for each other. Our teams come to play, and nobody's going to roll over and die. You got to beat that other team, and he's beaten me and I've beaten him. But at the end of the day, I respect that immensely, and that's why I know when we play Ohio State, I hope it's going to be a great match, and that my team is going to be there, and make them earn it.
Yeah, no, and certainly your team did, again, to beat them in doubles, to beat Bernie and Anthrop. Like, that just doesn't happen. And it's a testament to your guys. So impressive. And, again, to ask the question bluntly, after a half decade that the breaks haven't really gone your team's way, the way it has down the home stretch of this season, it sounds silly, but like, how gratifying is it to just be back in the winner's circle, be back where I know you pride UCLA men's tennis in being?
Immensely. There's no doubt about it. I'm not going to try to hide that. I mean, I love what I do. I've been so grateful. I'm still very competitive. I mean, I've been coaching now here for 42 years. I played at UCLA. I have the highest regard for our school and for our program. It hurt badly that we weren't competitive, but you've got to be realistic and see what's going on with your team. And we had a couple major guys have to have surgeries and out, during the years, previously to this. So to finally have everybody somewhat healthy, it was a godsend, first of all, and then to have us playing well and winning and being confident. Yes, I'm ecstatic that we're back in the round of 16. But boy, I'm not satisfied, and I am so looking forward to this match and being able to maybe get to the quarterfinals again and down to Waco. But I know we have a heck of an opponent and a heck of a match tomorrow to have to win. And when these two teams play, we bring out the best of each other. There's no doubt about it. I've always said this USC UCLA rivalry has made us both better throughout the years. Peter Smith and I battled for years. Dick Leach, I learned so much from Dick Leach and Dick Gould. Having them in the conference as a young coach, but Peter did such a great job too. But playing them home and away every year, we've had years. This is our third time this year. We played sometimes 4 or 5 times in a year if we play each other in a conference tournament and NCAAs or whatever. But uh, this rivalry has made us, I think, definitely better teams. And I'd be surprised if the USC side didn't believe that also.
Yeah. Now I grew up with the 2012 to 2014 era rivalry. That iteration between you two is when I was really getting into college tennis. I like to think it's why I like it the way I do today. Don't you worry. I am going to litigate my thoughts on the 2014 team with you a little bit later. Like I can't let you leave the podcast because I've had Carousel on, and I think he and I at this point have done like 2 hours collectively between the many shows on that 2014 team. So we will get back to that. But no, yeah, it's of course again from the tennis gods that it's USC of all teams in the round of 16. It's poetic certainly to see. And the Big Ten schedule, by the way, not just the tournament championship, but I believe the road trips were Northwestern Illinois. You mentioned Nebraska, Wisconsin. By the way, Champaign to Chicago sounds simple. It's not a simple journey. That's a hike. And so, that trip, Columbus, Penn State is not an easy trip either.
The
What was your
worst.
experience? Yeah, yeah, yeah. What was your experience? Talk me through it.
Well, I mean, again, for doing this for so many years, I was at venues I really had never been to. I mean, Penn State I'd never been to. I had never played at Ohio State until we played them in their regular conference. I had been to Champaign for some NCAA tournaments, uh, but not Northwestern. I was born in Evanston, but had never been to their beautiful facility there. Nebraska, I'd never been to. Wisconsin, I had to for our NCAA championships a few years ago. So some really new venues, new learning curves for sure. But actually, I was very impressed with the facilities and just the coaches and the hospitality. You never know what it's going to be like when you travel on the road, especially for a first time. We've, been in the Pac-12 and done those for so many years. I could do it in my sleep, basically. But these were new experiences. But yes, that Columbus to get to Penn State, on Saturday morning was an experience. We were racing down to catch a little, prop plane or whatever to fly into there. And I knew if we didn't get that plane, we are probably not flying until the next day. But everything worked out well, luckily, with the planes and getting some practice. But boy, it was a learning curve experience for me.
No, that trip has taken many a lesser men. So, yes, a shout out to you all, certainly. And by the way, speaking of Pac 12, if there's a group chat with yourself, Paul, Clancy, celebrating again, the Pac 12's resurgence in conference tournament play this year, feel free to add me. As someone who, again, I know what pride you took in the Pac 12, how cool is it to see that? What did that mean to you?
Well, it was, and we did all text each other. If somebody would have mentioned that conference winners in the Big Four, were going to be, all teams that came in from a different conference, I think you could have gotten a lot of great odds at Vegas for that one. But and we were the fourth one, if I'm not mistaken. Everybody's saying, "Well, Billy, do you feel confident playing this finals because you're going to be the fourth one?" I said, "Well, not really." Um, but I think that was a heck of an accomplishment for Stanford, beating Wake Forest, first loss of the year for them, and the Virginia victory too. Clancy for his Arizona team, a great conference tournament. Um, and for us, it was fantastic. I'm trying to think of the third one. Oh, SEC Texas.
Yeah.
That's as tough a conference as there is. So all sort of not surprising. I think maybe ours was the most surprising one, quite honestly. But still, I was happy for our Pac-12 coaches that went on and did some great things also.
Yeah, no, it was a very fun conference tournament season. We've alluded to a bunch of these matches, so you may have given this answer already. What match do you think you learned the most about your team this year?
Oh, great question. It might have been that Ohio State match, quite honestly, because we knew it was going to be a tough one. We knew the crowd was going to be not against us. We knew the record. We walk in each day and see how many home matches they've won and conference matches and all that. But, you know, it really showed me the determination of our group of young men that were there. and their absolute commitment to getting it done. That really was an incredible hurdle. We had done some great things and overcome a lot of, you know, things that hadn't gone our way. But that win there, I think, really showed the coaches, and I think it showed our team individually that they were, a force to be reckoned with. And I think it really helped us as we moved up to Cal. We were somewhat hopeful to host.
Mhm.
After that, I think some people had us 15, 16 in the rankings, but the committee has a certain thing. So, we didn't, and A&M ended up, I think, getting that last spot that I think we maybe thought we were going to get. But in some ways, that might have been a blessing, quite honestly. I knew it'd be a tough win to go up to Cal and have to win on the road, but had we hosted, I think we would have been going to Wake Forest, and I don't want to say they're by far the best team, but doggone it, I don't think you could have to go somewhere tougher for the round of 16. Whereas, I knew we were going to have to probably go to San Diego. We played them, we knew them, we were close with them. They've got one of their players out that, certainly is one of their top guys. I was thinking it in the long run, it was a better scenario for us to really go far in the tournament. So I just, the minute you know, the the NCAA announcement came out, I shut the door. I said, "Hey, this is the greatest thing that happened to us, guys. We've got a great path in the tournament, much better than I think it would have been had we hosted." And I think the guys bought into that, and it's turned out to we got through it. We're hosting the super regionals. So I think it was somewhat lucky for us, quite honestly.
No, it's again been one of my favorite seasons to follow, and yeah, certainly we probably glossed over it to drop a doubles point and go find four singles wins on the road over Cal. Pretty impressive too, if you allow me to say, Coach. Again, a job well done by the Bruins. If you could go back to January 1st and tell yourself, Billy, let's reallocate a little more time doing this, whether it be on the court, off the court for this team, maybe it's like we're going to put Spencer in a hyperbaric chamber and we're just going to, whatever it may be. What might you say and why?
Well, sometimes I think there can be a tendency to overwork.
Hmm.
And I don't mean necessarily the hours that we have in our official practice, but we luckily have guys that really want to play pro tennis, as I think we've generally had throughout the years at UCLA. And these guys come out and hit, hour or so in the morning they come down and hit serves at night. Rudy, Emin, Adarsh, Spencer. You know, there might be a chance that I think they did a little bit too much, especially Spencer. He was arm was bothering, but he kept working. It's they almost sneak out and do it behind my back, quite honestly. And so I mean that's a great problem
For
for
sure.
a coach to have. Don't get me wrong, but that might be something that I take away from the season because all those guys had some nagging injuries. It's hard to tell young kids that sort of seem like they just want to get there sooner than later and work themselves where they're not smart about giving themselves a day off. I mean, Rudy Kwan hadn't had a day off in 30 days for a while, and I said, "What the heck are you doing?" I mean, your body actually needs some rest at times, and a lot of times these kids don't realize that. They have a lot of nervous energy, but bones, joints, muscles. It's not bad to take a day off every once in a while. So that actually would be a thought that I've had, and put that in my book as far as making sure I'm conscious of that a little bit more. There's not been many years where I've had to worry about that, so sort of a new chapter maybe.
No, I like to hear that. And speaking of new chapters, that gets me to my home stretch of questions before we take a deep dive in history. I can't help it. Again, it's Billy Martin. I have Billy Martin on my show. For someone like me, that means a lot. Um, times changing. Obviously, a week in something that may have in the past gone less, seemed less prominent. The transfer portal opens this week, and I'm curious in this new age of its normalization, where you put the transfer portal as you think about broader roster construction.
Well, I have to say, being in old fashioned guy again. It really rubbed me wrong at the first. Like guys that are thinking about maybe coming in and playing 3, 4, 5 in your team, and they want full scholarship and astronomical amount of money, in my opinion. Uh, but it's the way we've got to go. There's just no doubt about it to survive. Um, Especially with some schools now raising their scholarship limit to 8, 9, 10. We are not going to do that as of now at UCLA. We're at 4.5, like we've always been. So, in order to really compete, also, I'm going to have to supplement that with NIL. So, yes, I'm having to put a different hat on and again, broaden my horizons as far as what you're going to have to do to compete in college athletics if you really want to be one of the best. And I don't think we at UCLA don't want to be one of the best. So I am fully engaged in that, and will be going down that path and already have as far as starting for next year. Because it's the first question everybody seems to ask nowadays. I mean, scholarships are a given, but it's NIL, and you can't blame them. They're thinking about their expenses for the summer. When they do turn pro, they want to have something in the bank to help pay for that. So it's here, and I think it's pretty much here to stay.
Yeah, that NIL piece, it's another thing I've been asking every coach. How prevalent is that now in the recruiting conversations you have?
I think it's ultimately important.
Yeah.
Um, for something that never came up maybe 2 years ago, it's either the first or second question out of their mouth. So, um, you know, academics used to be really important, scholarship used to be really important, good weather or whatever it might be. But hopefully, they feel I could help them out, from a coaching standpoint and the rest of my staff. But uh, probably NIL is there definitely one or two.
Yeah, I want you to know I've been out to your campus. Yeah, there are worse places to spend 4 years. Not the worst place. You get them on campus, it's hard to get them to leave, I imagine. By the way, I say the same thing about Pepperdine. All these
Oh yeah,
LMU at the top of the hill. I'm like, yeah, I could stay here too.
yeah.
California, not the worst place in the world. If you could, and again, I'm going to ask you to put on the pundit hat here because I know you're locked into your matchup with USC. I'm going to ask you about that again in a second as well. But a lot of great matchups here this weekend. If you had the free time to nerd out with one of our other round of 16 battles, what might you pick and why?
As far as other matches across the
Yeah,
country,
the other matches across the country, any of them jump
um,
out to you?
you know, this is going to sound really ridiculous, but I think it's the only one I've really looked at as who we would play. I think it's Texas and
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I was watching that Tennessee match on your coverage last weekend, and just it was amazing, that comeback. So I know those would for sure, but quite honestly, you'd have to tell me, because I don't look that far ahead, and I know TCU's in the bottom of our half, if I'm not mistaken, and they play is it North Carolina or South Carolina?
UCF.
Oh, UCF, which
Yeah.
is, I think, at least for me, a surprise team. It doesn't mean that they're not really good. They've got to be a great team, but boy, I didn't see that coming, and not that I would, I guess, but and I haven't seen them play all year, but obviously you got to take them for real with all the teams they've beaten, but okay, so yeah, you got to take TCU. It's at TCU. I guess you would probably have to take Texas. At their place. I really think the super regionals, and I'd love to see the statistic. We had to go to Texas well, not for super regionals. We did a few years ago to Baylor, but I'd love to hear what's a percentage of super regional teams that haven't won. I would bet it's under 20%, if even that. But that's it's a tough one, and that's where the advantage is. But is that helping me sleep better tonight? Probably not. Uh, but I know, like, Stanford, fourth seed, who would they be playing?
Stanford's got South Carolina. And by the way, just quick tangent here. This is how we can get to the history almost. That 2019 team that went to Baylor, if you think like Cressy, Keegan Smith, Govind Nanda, show wasn't quite as big as it is now. Thankfully, thank you to all the listeners. But that team had a cult following amongst us because it was like, all right, well, they're up 3-0. So, like, where's four? Actually, they're up 3.5 because obviously Keegan and Max go on to have the year they did in doubles as well. And it was always like, well, who's going to find number 4? And Ben Goldberg, a dear friend, obviously former player and coached under you as well. Like, Ben had a great year. That was such a fun story. So I remember that team very fondly, just so
Yeah,
you know. But yes, again, like I think it speaks to all the matches are fun. You left focusing on the other teams to Rickus. You know, that's a Rickus
exactly.
job.
He's
Yeah,
much better at that.
that's called
I only
delegating.
worry about me,
Yeah, I like
my
that.
team.
Yeah, well then, speaking of that, again, it's the Trojans. Everyone knows UCLA, USC, what that rivalry means to college tennis in particular. You've had the chance to play them a couple times this year. What do you view as their biggest strength? What is it going to take for your team to knock them off?
Well, I think they're very solid 1 through 6. They have caused some tougher matchups. You know college tennis as well as anybody now. You know, a lot of this is comes down to just sheer matchup, styles of play. Your one guy could be so effective, but he plays a certain style of play that just doesn't match up really well for him. They've had a lineup that has matched up well against our guys in singles. Doubles, I don't believe, well, I think we won the doubles point the first time, but lost the second time. But I think that's going to be crucial. Always it's so much harder to win 4 points than 3, although we were lucky enough to do it last weekend. I don't want to have to go through that maybe again, but it's just, they're solid 1 through 3 in doubles, solid 1 through 6 in singles. You know, every point has to be earned. I can't say, boy, I bet you we can count on this number, number 5 or number 4 or something like that. Generally, a lot of times in matches, you can do that. I don't feel this match is like that. Yes, a few matchups are a little bit different, but in all, it's going to be a great match just because I think every match is going to be contested and well fought. And, they have, great players. And I think we have great players. And, luckily we're hosting that hopefully could help a little bit. But, it's still the same size court, same size net. You're just going to try to see who comes out and has the courage really to win their match. I think a lot of it comes down to not making it such a big deal, but just playing within yourself and having the courage to step out there and to want to play and to want to be in that position. Again, we talked about that earlier. You have to want to be there, and I always think of that Billie Jean King quote. Pressure is privilege,
Mm-hmm.
and tomorrow our guys have some privilege, and hopefully we can do something about that.
Yeah, no, it's a matchup everyone's looking forward to. I've asked every coach, what are they looking forward to most? A lot of USC, UCLA love, certainly respect for what that rivalry has mean. My last bonus question for you. Can't help it. 2014. Let's just do it. Let's roll the balls out. Let's play some tennis here. Um, Obviously, the 13 team makes the final, and I don't want you to hate me in our first encounter here, so we'll save that for part 2 because, yeah, the toe touch, like it's got a name. If a
Oh my
match
God.
has a name, it's an all timer.
I
But the
still wake up in the middle of the night in a sweat thinking, did that really happen?
I could tell you, senior project, high school. So last few months, obviously, because it's May, you just go out and work for someone and you're doing it. And I'm constantly refreshing the live score and be like, what happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? So me too. I also wake up sweating, still wondering what's happening. But the 14 team, because again, this is the peak of my fandom powers. And like that fall was the Klay Thompson fall. And he's number 1 in the country and he's won. 2 players people might have heard of. Marcos Giron, Mackie McDonald. They're 2 and 3. And again, legitimate 2 and 3 because Klay Thompson's 1 in the country. Gage Brymer, pre-ACL tear. He's my high school class, him and Mackie. So, like, those are the guys. He's at the peaks of his powers. Carew, now obviously killing it on the pro circuit. He's at 5. If Dennis is healthy all year, do you guys bring home the title?
Uh, you're talking about Dennis McCurchin,
Or
right?
did I say Dennis? Excuse me, Adrian.
Adrian, yeah. Well, we still had him back, and he was
Yeah.
playing good doubles and singles, maybe a little lower than what he might have been. But he won that point at 5. We can't blame it on him.
Mhm.
uh, it just got to that point where they hung in there. I think the guy that probably regrets how poorly he played would be Marcos.
Mhm.
Probably his worst college match of or big college match of his career. And we've talked about it. And the other young men played really well. Played very smart too. Uh, Gage and Mackey both played very well. You know, I hate to point fingers, but I think Carew would you
Right.
know be the first one to say that was his match, to win. He served for it. I think he was up in the game 30-15 serving for it. Um, but still, we had Clay there. Clay had done so well against that young man the first time he played him, indoors and won the first set of that match 6-0. But when it got tight, and in that kind of position, it makes it difficult to play relaxed tennis. And Clay was the champion of relaxed tennis. I mean, he was stringing his rackets back then, I think around 35 pounds. Each match he'd go down a pound, but he'd huge serve, get in there and just dink volleys, little drop volleys. He's 6'6" and got arms like a giraffe, just covers everything. So, you know, I think when you get tight a little bit, it's harder to have that feel for those, soft little hand volleys that he played. But that other young man in the tiebreaker played well, but that was disappointing loss for us. But you look back at how well those guys have done, some of them, and yes, I think we were definitely the favorite team. But that's what sports is all about, having to do it on that particular day, and you give credit to Oklahoma for taking it to us that night.
Yeah, no, people forget Alcorta, Alvarez, that top two were. I mean, they made 3 straight finals. Like that
Yeah.
speaks for that Oklahoma era. Carew, by the way, was quick to be like, "Oh, I gave that one." Like he was like, "I know," and because what he always says is, and people who remember, USC wins the title that year over Oklahoma. What he always says is, "All we wanted was USC again." He's like, "That is what we wanted more than anything," and he's like, "And that's probably what did us in."
Maybe overthinking or thinking ahead of that match. We didn't, they're too good to take for granted. But yeah, that's always a lesson to learn. Uh, you know, although I think we played them the next 2 years in the NCAA's, and the result wasn't much different. But each time it came down to the last match, third set. Wasn't the semis, but I think it was quarters one year, round of 16. But I was so glad when we didn't have to play Oklahoma in a NCAA tournament after 3 years in a row.
No, I can imagine. And as I've joked throughout this series with other coaches, when I write my book in 2037, It's More Than Isner, A Complete History of College Tennis, you're going to have to be the person who guides us through it with all these different stories. Because I got a bunch left in the queue I'd like to get to. I promised you only 30 minutes, and I've exceeded that. So this is where we can leave things now. And it means I get to say, please come back, Coach, because certainly this was a pleasure. And going to be a pleasure to watch the Bruins compete this weekend. UCLA men's tennis head coach Billy Martin, thank you for taking the time to join the show tonight, and good luck to obviously you and the team here this weekend.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here. And anytime you want me, I'll be back. I'm really happy for what you're doing for college tennis, making us certainly more visible and making it or be seen as the exciting sport it really is. So appreciate your help.
No, I appreciate that, Coach. Good luck this weekend.
Bye.
Recording